I remember getting my very first console. I was, I think, in the 6th grade. I've played video games before, but this was my first console. And what did I get? PS4? The Nintendo Switch? The new Xbox? No. I got a purple GameCube. Yeah, the system that came out in 2001. And what was my first game that I got for it? The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. And I got it for free too. If you haven't seen the price of that game, it is expensive, like $120 for a copy. And that's like the whole GameCube library. And I've happened to come across free or cheaper versions of those games, and actually I'm playing Wind Waker right now. And, recently I've been thinking back on childish experiences and comparing them to some of my favorite pieces of media. Recently, me and my friend just had a conversation about how our summer's been going. We just graduated 3 weeks ago, and our summer has not been going to crap, but it's not been fun. Don't get me wrong, we have a trip planned ahead very far from here, but our last years before we go off and meet new people and change our lives, we were expecting big hangouts and long-lasting memories. And we're 3 weeks in, and the only memory I can tell you about that I have this summer is getting one of my friend's brother's car stuck in a mud thing. Like we were going mudding. And I'm gonna be honest, thinking back on it, it was I think the first day of summer vacation. And then after that, we haven't really hung out with anyone else. We've been to the theme park once in a while, and we've played some Minecraft and maybe even Fortnite. And not to say that those memories aren't fun, but it was just me and him in our Minecraft server, and we started talking about how angry and lonely and sad we are, because it almost feels like sometimes that this change has been affecting us way too much. And you're probably seeing the title of this video and you're like, what is this guy who only makes skits for 3 people to watch, saying? Why is he venting? And I think a big reason on why I wanted to make this video is because I wanted to make something I'm very passionate about, but very vulnerable. See, my friends are going off to college. I think one of them wants to be a physical therapist, and the other one wants to either be a music teacher or a psychologist, and I am taking a gap year. And I know that's not really a thing that people look fondly upon, but my gap year is mainly to travel. My plan is to get a van or something and travel the world, meet new people, see new cities and hikes, do that stuff. And the part that scares me is that I know for a fact I'm going to be lonely during this, as my friends are making new friends and possibly growing apart from me. And so this is where I started thinking about The Legend of Zelda. I remember playing Twilight Princess for the first time, and I would always skip the dialogue, and I didn't really care. I love Zelda. I've never really played a game though before. I would watch a lot of YouTubers like Peanut Butter Gamer or Matthew Patrick from Game Theory talk about these games. I was so enthralled by games like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, and Skyward Sword that I don't know, it just encapsulated me. And when I first started playing my first Zelda game, being Twilight Princess, I was just happy that I got to cut down people with swords. I remember too, because you have to have a memory card for the GameCube. I didn't even have a memory card, so I would keep replaying the game from start and start and start. But then I remember when I grew up and finally in like high school, after my very first breakup, I started getting into like a lot of things that I had interests in, but I didn't act on them until my first breakup. One of them was reading comic books. I've always collected them, never started reading them until after. And I never started getting invested in video games and movies like I am now until that life-changing moment, And, I started playing guitar more, and I think I became a better person and the person I wanted to be because of that situation. But I was still very sad because of it. And one of the games I started playing was Twilight Princess, and I got halfway through the game, And I was so happy with myself, even though I was halfway through, that I actually went on somewhat of a journey, And so I'm looking back on it now, and I'm like, why is Zelda always on my mind right now, Besides Kingdom Hearts, it's just a childhood game of mine that I look fondly towards, right? No. And maybe this video can be called Why I Need Skyrim, or Why I Need Kingdom Hearts, or Mario Galaxy, or maybe a movie or an album, but right now it's Zelda. Because I think Zelda, to me, means change, and being brave about those changes, I think like a big reason on why I'm so sad about what's going on in my life right now is because I feel like I'm only going to have control once everything changes, and then change is going to happen again and again and again. And, and it sucks. But with Zelda, things do change. Look at Ocarina of Time. Link wakes up one day without a fairy, now has a fairy, and the person who looked over him is dead. And now he's got to go and save a princess, and he loses his life, by sleeping for 7 years in this temple and stuff. With Wind Waker, this kid's sister gets taken from him, and now this 9-year-old has to go and save her, instead of celebrating his birthday on his island. And so, what am I trying to get at? I see myself as Link. I see myself as like that brave hero, the Bilbo Baggins, the Luke Skywalker, I should say. As much as it sucks having to leave, I see myself as these characters because, if anything, these guys are brave, Again, look at Link. He is going off as a 9-year-old, around that time, and is trying to survive. And now, I'm expected to do that at the age of 18, He's never probably going to see his friends like that ever again, and I think that's why I need The Legend of Zelda right now. I need an escape that isn't really an escape, but is a softer way of telling me that these things are going to happen, but it's okay. As much as I want to see my friends, and I want to thrive with them, I want to hang out with them, I don't think that's going to happen, Maybe it will happen once in a while, but not really right now, or not how it used to be. And I'm gonna miss that. But that doesn't mean that that's it. My friend was telling me about how he's really excited to go off to college because me and him feel the same way about this. And he's really excited because he's gonna meet new people who hopefully care about him, And we're not saying that our friends don't care about us, but sometimes it doesn't feel like it, And that sucks. And I feel like, in my opinion, the only reason I feel that way is because we're growing up, you know? I don't know. Like I said, I'm mainly just ranting anyways, but if I've learned anything from this, though, or if I'm telling myself anything, is that as scared as I might be, it'll all work out in the end. Maybe I'll lose some friends. I don't know. Never talk to them again. Maybe say hi to them. Or like I said, maybe I'll forget about them. But life is still going to go on, and life is still going to offer me opportunities that I deserve or that I need. You know? And so, bringing it all back to Zelda, The Legend of Zelda, I think what Zelda is teaching me is that I need to be like Link. And not just be a hero because I want everyone to see me, but be a hero because I'm brave and I know that that's the right thing I need to do. I mean, hell, look at Link in Majora's Mask, you know? He just got done saving the world, you know? Was an adult turned back into a kid. And even after the aftermath of Majora's Mask, no one knows who he is. He saved the world from impending doom from a moon crashing down onto them. And no one thanks him. Except for Skull Kid. You know? And he just goes back into the wilderness trying to find his friend Navi again. You know? You know, as how many times people knock on those games, you know, for not having the best graphics at the time. I still go back to the originals because I think Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time are freaking beautiful. But I guess that's just me. You know? I feel like people should talk about how media changed them, you know? If it wasn't for the album The Wall by Pink Floyd, I wouldn't have gotten more into guitar and music theory and stuff like that. If it wasn't for the movie Donnie Darko, I would not have gotten into writing the way I want to write, you know? I remember when I used to write, I used to just try to be like the next person. No, I want to be me, you know? Video games have taught me, you know, along with the other medias, that I just need to be my own person. You know? Focus on myself, and hopefully life will get better. Not to say that it's bad right now, but I guess I just miss my friends. But it's not like, I don't know, maybe a hangout will change that or something. Well, I'm Braden Nolte, and thanks for listening to my rant. Bye-bye.